Hello, my name is Autumn Brown, and I'm a researcher with Oklahoma State's Oklahoma Oral History Research Project for our Activism and Education in the Civil Rights Movement Oral History Project. Today, January 31st, 2020, I am meeting with Donna Gabriel to discuss her experiences with school desegregation in Oklahoma City. Donna, thanks so much for talking with me today. Let's begin by you just telling me a little bit about yourself, like where were you born and about your family?
Hi, Autumn. I am Donna Gabriel, Morgan Gabriel, and I was born here in Oklahoma City, University Hospital, in April. My mom said it was the rainiest day that they had seen in years, and the streets were flooded, and we had to get to the hospital for me to be born. So I don't like the rain. That's just my personal, I really don't. And born in 1958, so I'm almost 62 years old, and I grew up here. I have never moved away. Been in Oklahoma City my entire life. Visited a lot of places, but always come back home here. My family, I am the oldest of 7 children. My mother has 7 children. My father has 16, and I am the oldest of all 16, all 18 together. So. But they see me as big sister. Our parents are gone. My parents are gone now. So I'm kind of in this position of mom, sister, auntie, godmom, father, everything as far as my siblings go. I'm a mother of 2 children. I've given birth to 2 children. My husband and I together, we have 11 children. 22 grandchildren. 1 was born last night. So it made us 23 and 1 on the way.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. What girl or boy?
It's a girl.
Oh.
She's a girl. We couldn't see what she was for the whole 9 months. The umbilical cord was between the legs, so we never could tell. So she was a girl. Had a head full of hair. We're going to go see her on Monday.
That's so exciting.
She's in Texas. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So can you describe the community, what your community was like when you were growing up?
I lived in a couple of 2 or 3 places for grade schools at a time. I started out at Truman Elementary, which I lived almost in the backyard of Truman School. My parents then moved over to the Kennedy School area, John F. Kennedy area. We lived on Euclid, and I did go to Capitol Hill Middle School. We moved again in Capitol Hill. So I went to a few different schools, my elementary school area, and then junior high school I went to 2, which was Kennedy and Harmony. And then I went to Douglas, was my high school. At the year that I was transitioning from junior high school to high school, they made Douglas Kennedy, John F. Kennedy became Kennedy Douglas with just 9th graders. So I was there with just 9th graders. The 10th, 11th, and 12th graders were at the big Douglas school, and we were at one school by itself. The following year, my sophomore year, we got to move over to the big Douglas High School as sophomores, and I was class president of sophomore class. And then my parents moved again. My mom and my dad got divorced, and my mom remarried, and we moved to Northeast 27th and Martin Luther King. So I had to go to a different school. I was very upset about that, but we got a transfer so I could stay since I was already a student at Douglas for 2 years. And then the busing started, and I got bused anyway. So I ended up at Northwest Classen High School. The second year of busing, I was out there, and that's where I graduated from.
So what was it like growing in your neighborhood? My
neighborhood was all black, lots of children. We had families that I've grown up with my entire life. My best friend, she's same age as me. We graduated from school. We have been together since kindergarten. So we have been friends. We met each other in kindergarten. We came all the way through schools together, and we graduated together. She went to one college, I went to another, but we never stopped, and now we're still friends and we still see each other. So you have lifelong relationships in neighborhoods where I grew up. My main growth was in the Northeast area. Like I said, we lived on Euclid, and then we moved to Northeast 27th Street. So I've always lived on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. And growing up there, I have friends, husband, that we grew up together. My husband and I have been knowing each other since we were 9 years old because we grew up in the same community. We went to the same church. We started dating as high schoolers and 14, 15 years old. We started dating. So we were both known each other. Our families had known each other our entire lives because we lived in the same community pretty much all our life. So yes, growing up there, no desegregation at all. I don't remember seeing or living with a Caucasian or an Indian or Asian child at all. School-wise, yes, they were there. Not very many in Douglas, but in my community, none at all.
Okay. So can you kind of, what was the economic climate like around that time? With it being still, like, with housing laws still kind of segregating people by race, can you talk about, like, economic tensions or anything of that nature?
Very, growing up in high school, I start to notice we weren't poor, but we were not middle class either. My parents worked. My stepfather worked he worked as a bus driver for the mass transit bus system. My mom was a homemaker, as well as she cleaned hotel rooms for Holiday Inn downtown. And so economically, we got to see a difference in how some middle class families were progressing and some lower poverty stricken families were struggling to make it. Economically, I didn't start to learn how this was really affecting people until I was probably in my sophomore, junior year of high school. And I'm thinking, wow, we really do need education in order to advance, progress, feed your family, and keep a roof over your head. A regular job wasn't getting it, and it just didn't get it because there were not that many jobs for Black people on the Black side of town, which we call the east side of Oklahoma City. There were not hardly any jobs. So we had a couple of grocery stores. We had, we've never had a 7-Eleven store on the east side of town. So there were not a whole lot of things that you could work. You had to go out to the other sides of town in order to obtain a job economically to pay for your family. We could invest a lot of money into our community because there were not a lot of companies or businesses Black owned in our community that we could shop at. My grandmother lived on 12th and Eastern was what it was called, but now it's Martin Luther King. She lived right across the street from Kennedy Junior High. And my grandmother cleaned houses, white people houses for a living. And she used to take me, I'm her oldest, there was one other grandchild older than me, but she passed away. So I'm the oldest grandchild now. But she used to take us downtown to Buster Brown Shoes and Streets department stores were there, and Kaiser's ice cream. And we weren't even allowed to try on shoes. So the economic difference that you could see in the Black families from the east side of Oklahoma City were, I couldn't try on shoes when I was 6, 7 years old. It was not allowed. We could buy them, but we had to give our size. My grandmother was she marched in change. She helped with making change. She always taught me and my older cousin that we have to stand for what we know should be done, and you just don't allow, things that people say they want to do and should do is not actually correct. You have to stand for what you know is right. And so we did. I got to go into some marches with Hannah Atkins as a little girl, and Clara Looper, so some of those things, Melvin Porter, I was with my grandparents and my parents at those events, and they stick with me in my brain. They have brought me a long way. I always say to the younger generations, and I'm not that old, but I'm part of the boomer group, and I say to the millennials and everyone, you have to know whose shoulders you stood on. in order to get where you are today, in order for the Black community to graduate to a higher standard of economic living, we have to remember whose shoulders we stood on.
What was it like when you were participating in those marches?
I don't remember much about them except for a lot of people and loud and my grandmother told me later in years that there were dogs, out patrolling us, police officers and stuff. I remember being, and the one thing I can remember doing is sitting down on a curb on, I think the street at this time, now it's called Broadway, but it's kind of like E.K. Gaylord area, going up to 10th Street. And then we went down 10th Street toward is now St. Anthony Hospital area. That's where they marched at. I can remember that. I don't remember a whole lot about the actual dates of the marches or the sit-ins or whatever they were doing at the time. I just can remember holding my grandmother's hand and being down there and thinking, where did all these Black people come from? And white, because there was a lot of white people there too. And the only white people I really remember is teachers, because even in the Black schools we had white teachers. So I don't remember a whole lot of white people in my lifetime as a child. But that particular, I remember we were in front of Buster Brown's downtown, and a lot of more white people seemed to be vivid, that I could remember them being there.
Okay. So, up until your 10th grade year, you were in segregated schools.
Yes.
What was your experience like in segregated schools?
Wonderful. I was, everybody looked like you. Like I said, we did have white teachers, but they were the teachers, so it didn't really bother you, or you didn't think anything about it. But all the students were like me. The students were Black students. We, like I said, we forged everlasting friendships, and but the being in a segregated school and then leaving and going to a desegregated school, I found out that we were not taught the same. In Douglas, I was first chair flute. I played the flute. I started in 8th grade, I believe, and then I advanced, and I was in, Mr. Davis was my band teacher at Douglas, and I was the first chair flute when I was in my end of freshman, beginning of sophomore year. I was a 4-point student at Douglas, completely 4-point. When I transferred to Northwest Classen, my band skills were so bad that I had to quit the band. I couldn't keep up with what Northwest Classen was teaching their students at flute. I was like 0 chair compared to what the Black students were learning and being taught compared to what the white students were learning at the school. Also, sophomore class president, I had to leave that, and I wasn't even allowed to be in student council at Northwest Classen. I think I finally got into an actual club, courtesy club, when I was a senior at Northwest Classen. So the change from going from being all Black school, all Black students, to being mixed students and everything, I was no longer a 4-point student at Northwest Classen. My grades for one semester dropped completely, so I didn't graduate as a 4-point honor student because of that one semester. And my mom was very upset about that. And as I've grown older, I realized Black students were not being taught the same as white students. Our books were different. Our books were not, it's nice. When I got to Northwest Classen, I was like, ooh, y'all have beautiful paper-covered, brown bag-covered books where the books stayed nice. We had none of that when I was at the Black school and growing up in elementary, junior high, and high. And so, yes, being segregated, you could tell there was segregation in the 1960s. And so, yes, it was a complete difference of going from Black segregated to desegregated. Lots of fights when we moved over to Northwest Classen High School. A lot of my childhood friends that I grew up with, that we went to church together and everything, they left Northwest Classen. They didn't stay. They got transfers to different schools. And I don't know if it was mainly because the desegregation was so hard on all the students. Knives and fighting and, oh yeah, I think my first week or so, maybe 2 weeks at Northwest, because we didn't even get to have class because it was so disruptive. Just fighting and hollering and people throwing stuff at you and everything. It was a very hard time in that 1970, I believe 73 year of moving over from a black school to football games, and my brothers played football at Northwest Classen. They're like 4 years behind me, but I would go to their games. And I think one of my siblings might have been a freshman when I was a senior. And he had to move to Northwest Classen also. But the games were totally different. You know, it's not the spirit of Douglas High School that they still carry. And I was a part of that. And going over to here, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. You know, we didn't have the class spirit that we had. And then the class spirit of you know, the camaraderie and the glee club and the cheerleaders, it all changed at Northwest Classen because we became a mixture. And I think my entire year, I only was at Northwest Classen for 2 years. I graduated. One black person was on our cheerleading team and our majorette team. One. The rest were all white. And so you didn't have that same support system for the cheerleaders, the basketball team. That came years later, you know, after I was already grown and gone. My siblings got to experience more of a camaraderie with the student body and the glee clubs and the sports, what they call it, Spirit Week and all that. So they got to see a lot more of that at Northwest, whereas I did not.
So you've talked about the level of education in black schools versus white schools, but can you talk about the teachers that you had in segregated schools? How effective were the black teachers in segregated schools?
When I was at Kennedy, I was on the debate team for junior high. I was televised in a competition where I got to go to the Capitol to speak with my teacher's name was Mr. Travis at the time. He was a white teacher, but I never saw him as white. He taught me how to speak in public, how to write a speech. I mean, he was an excellent teacher. He actually taught us government, and he was at my black school, but he taught black students compared to the other teachers I had. He always took a straight interest in us. And if he picked you out, which he picked me out, you're going to excel. You're going to do better because I know you have better in you. He pushed us to be, I still have a trophy from that competition that I was in where I won. And my mom has it, my parents are gone, but at my mom's house. It's still there on the shelf where I won a competition in speech and giving a speech. And those things, I don't know if I desired them when I moved to a new school or if I didn't have teachers who pushed me. I was an office aide when I was at Douglas. Kennedy, Douglas, and Douglas. I was an office aide, and we had Miss Johnson. She's a black female who worked the office. Our principals, I can't remember my principal's name, and they were all black teachers and office personnel that pushed us to be better at. If you made a B, you could make an A. You know, you put forth the effort. And that's probably how I ended up being a 4-point student, because my parents always pushed me to do my work and to excel at it. But my teachers also pushed me to do better. You can do better, so put forth your best effort. I didn't have that at Northwest Classen. I don't I remember having one black teacher at Northwest Classen. I may be wrong. My mind is only, let me go so far back, but I had one black teacher. She was English lit, and she didn't stay. She wasn't there when I graduated, so she was my junior year teacher. I had a white female teacher named Mrs. Householder, who was my homeroom teacher in 11th grade, and she pushed you sometime. Not all the time, and I noticed not as much for the black students, but she did push me. She pushed me more than I saw her pushing other students, and that may have been just in the classroom. She may have had a personal relationship with them in the, one-on-one, whereas in the classroom, she pushed me quite a bit. And I wrote papers in her class also, which helped me so much more when I got to college, in paper writing and the, your beginning, your middle, and your conclusion. You have to know those formats, and a lot of students didn't learn that. Yeah. And so, yes, Miss Householder was a white teacher, but she did do more pushing. I graduated early. I went to work after December of my senior year, so I don't recall much about senior year. So I wasn't there that much. Mm-hmm. So I was already out working a job and getting, saving my money for college. So.
Okay. What was it like for you to have to be bused to a new school?
Oh God, I'm sorry.
No, describe those tensions.
That was tension. When we would go to the bus stop, get on the bus, drive almost an hour, 45 minutes from where I lived on Northeast 27th Street, all the way to 23rd in May. Our school was on 27th and 25th in May. That's a long ride. And the bus is full of black students. When we get to the school, we're getting off and we're not met with, good morning, let's have a great day. We're met with tension. I can remember the entire junior year, I would hate to have to go to school, and never feeling comfortable in that place called high school. It just never was comfortable. And that may be why I didn't join a lot of things, because I was very active at Douglas, band and school and speech and, class president. I did a lot of things at Douglas, but when I got to Northwest Classen and I couldn't keep up with the band, so I got out. My I won't say self-worth, but my interest in being involved in things went to null. It went to zero. I didn't want to be there. And I didn't know, I don't know, I can say today that was mainly because I wanted to be a Douglas High School graduate, because that's where my whole family had come from. And by busing, yes, it was probably better for us in learning and being taught more, but it hurt more to have to leave what you knew, your 4-box wall, to go step out of one box into a totally different box. That it did hurt. It was very stressful. I don't know. I go to my class reunions. I've been to 3, I believe. My 10th class reunion. I missed the 20th. I went to the 30th, and I went to the 40th. And I don't know any of those students. We go to class reunions now, and the handful of blacks that were there that stuck together, that we come back to a reunion and we all sit together. We never really got to know the other students. They don't know us either. And we just had a 60th birthday a couple of years ago, and we had a big Northwest class, and those of us that turned 60, we had a party. We had a big class of 76 party for 60-year-olds. And we went, and we had a great time. I think I knew 4 people on the white side. On the black side, all of us sat together, all of us were together. We stayed segregated even at our reunions.
Wow.
And so the tension carried on into adult life of, I don't know you, you don't want to know me, I don't want to know you, I don't want to be here. And so that did cause a lot of friction in our day-to-day routines. I can remember being in the cafeteria at Northwest Classen lunchtime, and it totally segregated. All the black kids sat on one side of the cafeteria, all the white kids sat on the other side of the cafeteria. I mean, we didn't even mingle. The black kids had dominoes and stuff for lunch, and the white kids would be eating their lunch and talking and doing no mingling. And that's the way it was every day. And you're like, wow, what was the point in segregating us desegregating us if we were never going to desegregate?
Right.
And we
self-segregate.
we self-segregated, and we stayed that way all the way through prom. We went to prom, all of us together, and then we leave and go to our own separate after parties. And so the pictures, prom pictures, I have no white kids on the pictures with me. I'm not on any white children's pictures with them. Totally self-segregated, even though they had desegregated us supposedly. Yeah.
Lastly, can you just talk about, like, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of Brown? So Brown v. Board of Education essentially desegregated public schools. How effective do you think Brown has been?
That's a hard question, because I was kind of in both. Coming out of Douglas as I was, if I'd have stayed there and graduated, I would have not been college ready. Truth of the matter. But I would have been community ready. Graduating from Northwest Classen after being there 2 years and learning differently, being taught differently, I was more prepared for college, the truth be told. My freshman year at UCO, Central State is where I went, Central State University, was not as difficult as I thought it would be. I had to drop a math class because I wasn't quite prepared. But other than that, all my other classes were fine. My second year of college was harder, but still prepared, not knowing how to proceed and make my grades. And then I got married, and I left UCO and I got married, had a child, and went to school later at night to Votech school, and then I went to college again in the daytime years later. But being prepared for life, segregation helped you in that, because when you go out in the world to work, you're not going to be with just your kind of people. You have to know that, oh, I've got to learn how to live with these people. I got to learn how they think, and we're different, but we're the same. And so it prepared you more for that, as far as work environment, school environment, not church, because we're still segregated in church pretty much. They're getting better, but I still go to a black church. I think there's one white person that is in our church congregation. And so it prepared me more for the life ahead, but it was also very unsettling for my lifelong friends, lifelong family, separating us from people we'd been with, because some of the people I went to Douglas High School with didn't get to go to Northwest Classen when the busing started. They had to go to a totally different school. And so you lost some friends who you've been with so far, and it was very hard on us to stay friends because we got split. But as far as did it help? Yes and no. It helped in a percentage of people who were going into the workforce and going to college, and you got to learn how to sit next to students and that don't like you. And as a black female, I've had to deal with some prejudices in the workplace over my years. I've only had 3 jobs in my entire life, but I've had to deal with some prejudices from people that if I'd have stayed with all blacks, I might not have been ready for, or understood, or been able to handle how it was presented to me and given to. I could be, mean and evil, but I learned early how to deal with, different white people, Asian people, Mexican people, differently than we deal with blacks. So I say it has it's a balancing act. Yes, I don't think we should have stayed segregated, because in life you're going to have to go around these people in any position that you're holding, and know it tore up some communities. So it's kind of both.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I think that growing up in the 60s and the 70s was such a wonderful time. I mean, it was people discovering themselves, and then the civil rights movement was steady marching, and so change was coming. And I just want the young people of today to sometimes not be so selfish about where you are, but to sometimes remember those who got you to where you are, those that have shed their blood, their lives were taken for them to, in order to have the middle class and the rich and, the extra rich people now that are black people, that somebody had to die for you, somebody had to fight for you to get to those places. And, basketball teams and football teams we weren't even allowed to play on. And so now anybody can play on it, but remember those who did have to pave the way for you.
Right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm going to go ahead and stop.
Thank you.